On today's episode of the Habitz Podcast, we've got Katie Maycock sharing with us her good habits when it comes to stress management. So thanks for joining us, Katie. What qualifies you to be our guest expert when it comes to well-being and stress management?
So I'm the founder of Get Your Shit Together, literally and figuratively, where I talk to professionals, executives, and CEOs about how to manage their stress and anxiety so it doesn't impact their body, their mind, and their business. Now, the reason why I do this is because, one, I have a degree in nutrition, so I understand how the body works and how it breaks down foods, and I understand how stress actually impacts the body. But not only that, I've actually burnt out twice myself in my career, and that was no fun. So I can recognize the signs and symptoms in other people, and I understand what not to do and also how to come back from bad habits that you've already got that are causing you stress, that are ruining your health.
So what are some of the bad habits that you see commonly happens in people that are suffering from stress? Because I know I sort of bury my head in the sand.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things I see is they future me. So exactly what you just said, burying your head in the sand. A lot of people are like, you know what? I'm stressed, but I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to pretend like it doesn't exist. And you really can't do that. It's just going to get worse. That's a massive one, because you're going to end up just not solving the problem, and it just, like I said, it just gets 100 times worse.
I'm guilty of that. One of the worst things I do is where I actually almost set a time, a date, or an event that's going to happen, which is going to alleviate this stress from me, which is irrelevant. It doesn't work, by the way. It continues. So I just think, well, if I just sell X amount this month, or if I just get this many clients on, or if I just, it's Christmas, so I'll tackle this in January. That's how I tackle a lot of stress.
Yeah. So a lot of people will go, okay, I'm going to deal with this at this date, or I'm going to deal with that next week, or you know what? It's not really impacting me right now. So that's the biggest problem, right? If it's not directly impacting you today, you're less likely to solve it. However, what happens is once you get to that deadline you've given yourself, you're going to probably make another excuse, or the situation is so much worse that you've ended up getting health issues now. You're not sleeping at night. You've got probably digestive issues and other health issues that are going on as well. So you've actually just compounded on your stress and made it worse. And that's the other thing. Just because you're not actively thinking about it doesn't mean it doesn't pop into your head. I'm sure that you could probably say this, but if you've said, I'm going to deal with that next week, every now and then it pops into your head. So you're losing focus. You're not paying attention to other things that you need to do.
Sometimes I think I look for a short-term fix and so almost delay that process. Would you say that's a common bad habit?
Yeah, so a lot of people will go, they Band-Aid it. That's called the Band-Aid effect, right? It's not really getting to the root cause. And a lot of people do this when it comes to their stress and their health issues. So because they coincide really, if you're stressed out for a long period of time, that's why you burn out. And that comes with a whole array of health issues. But let's say you've got, you're not feeling great, you're not sleeping very well. You're like, do you know what? I'll sleep better next week, or I'll get a proper sleep once this is done. And it just doesn't happen. And so therefore you're compounding on your stress. So the initial stressor is keeping you up at night, which is then you're like, but that's okay. I'll deal with that tomorrow or next week. Or once this is done, I'll get a proper night's sleep and I'll have proper exercise and diet regime or whatever it is. And then you don't. And then what happens is you're then putting your body under physical stress as well as mental stress.
It's interesting you say there about the physical stress and the mental stress, because I think a lot of people proactively try and fix it when they are physically sick or ill. Is that a common bad habit?
Yeah, so that was me down to a T. And I knew better. I actually knew better. So I waited until I was so sick. I couldn't even get out of bed for a while because I was so unwell. And that was the minute, actually, that wasn't the minute. The minute I actually recognized that I had to manage my stress and my anxiety was I woke up one day and I had a cold sore that covered a quarter of my face. And I looked like Shrin Baratheon from the Game of Thrones. That was the moment that I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe I should get my shit together. And that was just one health issue. I had a whole slew of other health issues as well, but they were manageable. And I waited until I couldn't manage it anymore. I couldn't go to work anymore. I couldn't get out of bed. I was 26 and I couldn't walk up and down stairs.
That then leads nicely onto the good habits then, because those bad habits there all seem intrinsically linked, delaying the inevitable, ignoring it. Then that's obviously leading to longer term health and stress issues. And then you're almost in a position of, you can spiral out of control, a point of no return before you start acting, which I think is a terrible thing to let yourself get into. So what would be some of the good habits, if anyone identifies themselves as doing those things, that you suggest that they start implementing into their life as soon as possible?
So the first habit you really have to get into is better understand your own stress. If you've naturally diverted, or you future me yourself, so for instance, I'll deal with that next week or next year or whatever it is, actually use that time to press pause and go, actually, what can I do today that's going to make that easier for tomorrow so I don't have to deal with it next week? What can I do right now to solve this issue? Because the minute you get into that habit, you're likely to manage stress way more effectively. You're going to be more proactive with resolving your stress rather than reactive, because that's the biggest thing, right? You're being reactive to your stress, which then causes a whole array of other issues. But if you can be proactive. So the minute you feel that stress, and you can actually go, hang on a second, what can I do right now about it? You do that, action that straight away, because at the end of the day, action is going to create the change.
Yeah, that's a brilliant habit. Also, a little bit of action now, like you said, will stop it compounding for later on.
Yeah.
What would your second good habit be?
So the second habit that I would say to people is don't overhaul your life. I know that sounds really strange. So I've been a nutritionist for 10 plus years. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed with people that are stressed, they're trying to solve something immediately, and then they go into the whole, I'm going to overhaul my whole diet, exercise, and sleep regime. So they're, maybe they're right now going to bed at 1 a.m. in the morning and they're eating processed foods and they haven't exercised for like 10 years or something like that. They wake up and they go, do you know what? I'm going to start my new diet. I'm going to go to bed at like 9 p.m. and wake up at 4 a.m. because that's what LinkedIn has told me. I'm going to exercise 3 hours a day on my bamboo mat because that's what someone told me to do. And I'm going to, change completely my diet and only eat like green smoothies. Don't do that. That's actually really bad. That's going to put your body under a lot of stress. The other thing is as well, you need to make sustainable changes. So what I mean by that is, you've got to change your lifestyle that you are going to be able to manage. So it has to be realistic. And you've got to make sure it's sustainable, because otherwise, if you overhaul, you're creating more stress for yourself and it's just not going to be fun. And the other thing is you're not going to stick to it. So you're just going to revert back to what you were doing before anyway. So a lot of people use alcohol as a stress relief. They're like, oh, I'll have a glass of wine. I've had a really stressful day, which actually is not the best thing to do because it interrupts your sleep. It actually ruins your gut health. And it actually can, in the moment, it makes you feel good. But then the next day, it actually can cause anxiety and stress for a lot of people. Fun fact. But what I tell people is, it's just, if you're having like a bottle of wine a night, just cut that down a little bit, or choose have 1 day on, 1 day off, because that can actually be a huge benefit as well. It's not just about overhauling. It's just not going to work.
And your third and final good habit?
So my final habit that I do talk to a lot of people about, that a lot of people get wrong, especially when they run their own business, is learn to delegate early. So the people that I work with and the companies that they have, typically they've got 10 employees, they've expanded it to around 25 people. And what they end up doing is, obviously when you run a small business, you try and do everything, right? And that's very stressful. It compounds everything. You're stressed, you're probably not exercising, you're not dieting really well. And then on top of that, you're trying to solve other people's problems as well. So if you have 10 employees, it's easier to sort of go, oh, do you know what? Don't worry about it. I'll just solve that. Then you get to 25 people, it becomes a little bit more difficult. Yeah. And then when people try to scale from the 25 to 50 people, it becomes undoable because they are completely overwhelmed. They're completely unhealthy, and they don't have the mental or the physical resilience to actually scale their businesses. So for the people that run their own business, you really have to learn how to delegate more efficiently and effectively to make sure not only you solve your stress, but you're also creating a better work environment for your employees.
So if I'm listening to this now, I'm a busy business owner and I want to find out more about you because I can identify myself as having many of these bad habits, or I'm putting off the inevitable, I am stressed. Where can we find you? So
you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, www.getyourshittogether.io.
So thanks to Katie for joining us in the Habitz Podcast and sharing with us her good habits when it comes to stress management. Don't forget to join us next time for some more good habits to improve your business.